Her friend is magical, right? And where's she from? Earth. It's the same Disney show, bro.
I'm gonna stab him.
You're gonna look at me and you're gonna tell me that I'm wrong?
So, one thing I liked about the 2010s was that it was explosive with variety in a way that I did not see or appreciate in the decades coming up, as only until then did I pursue animation, not only with the power of the internet and social media, but also the thriving community. Nickelodeon has had its moment putting out gross shows, and now it's going into more endearing shows. Cartoon Network came out the gate with Regular Show, Adventure Time, and Gumball, and those three shows fundamentally changed what I wanted to see with animation.
Ow. Huh? What?
Adult animation widened its scope, with BoJack Horseman, Rick and Morty, Tuca and Birdie, Final Space, Bob's Burgers, shaping adult-oriented animation outside of the traditional Simpsons, Family Guy, Futurama bubble. If there's one thing about the 2010s that I fundamentally disagree with, is that it was stagnant. Everything from Gravity Falls to Teen Titans Go or Rise of the TMNT did not want to be the same cartoon. However, this doesn't mean that every show that came out carved its own identity. And you know, I kinda danced around this topic for a long time. We have a major double standard. I'm not talking to everyone here. Isn't it weird how Disney has put out 3 shows about main character is quirky and enters a new fantasy world and lives their life with cute, colorful, or dangerous creatures? And if you want to get technical, you can also count Gravity Falls because from what I recall, the main characters do not live there and are only there for the summer. Putting aside the clear comparison to the other fantasy shows on Cartoon Network, this is a trend at this point and it's gone unchecked. And that's because many of these shows are received pretty well. I love what Gravity Falls did. I enjoyed the first season of Star Vs. and Amphibia in its first few episodes. It was pretty okay. And the old adage of if it ain't broke, don't fix it technically makes sense here. So the only way the show doesn't become just another one of those fantasy shows is if it's good. So let's see.
Do not underestimate me, Gildersnake, for I am the good witch Azura, warrior of peace. Now eat this, sucker!
Jumping straight into the action, we get a quirky action scene that serves to be a neat foreshadowing moment as to what's to come from the main character. Luz is currently in the principal's office because she has to control the way that she expresses her imagination. You see, she's a weird girl who likes fantasy things, and I bet all the people on Twitter and Tumblr feel called out. More on that later. We see that she's into things that aren't conventional and has wacky outbursts. Oddly enough, she doesn't fit the same archetype that Steven, Star, KO, Finn, and others, who are also hyperactive do-gooders who want to save the world fit. She's actually a lot more laid back, almost to the point of being like Anne.
We all love that you express yourself, but if you can learn to separate fantasy from reality, you may need to spend the summer here.
Do you get it? You see, she's a weird girl who thinks outside of the box, so the camp is called Inside the Anyway, never mind. Luz's snakes are out of control. They dive bomb the principal, and she's off to this camp. It's crazy how her mother is so stuck in her ways. I'm sure the intentions here are to further ramp the point that Luz is a weird kid that no one understands. It's always amazing that these shows go into deep, almost analytical detail into how the weird characters are just like the viewer too, yet almost always have a few characters that are blatantly there just to serve as the other side. You're telling me that Luz can't be a weird girl from a weird family for once? Or maybe her family was weird and they were normalized as well? Anything that can provide for a fresh dynamic other than the parents who just don't understand what would be good for her. And I suppose that's the main problem here. These shows are getting more specific with who they're targeting, and that person is just not me. I suppose it's not hashtag relatable, but I'm also not a child. This episode just feels like it's checking off specific points rather than telling a natural fleshed out beginning. Do we have a character who's ultra creative and that no one understands? Check. Do we have a character who is older that opposes the creative child? Check. Do we have quirky moments that seem relatable?
I don't like any of that stuff. I like editing anime clips to music and reading fantasy books with convoluted backstories.
Check. Do we have moments in which they go about their normal lives so we can see how they are? No, not check. I guess it's not a priority among making sure the character really speaks to you. She follows this owl who stole a book that she threw away to satisfy her mother, which leads into Luz following the owl into this house, which serves as a device to whisk her away to a fantasy land. Does it look interesting? I guess. However, from watching this episode, they could have done a lot more to show you the creatures that you won't see again. However, speaking of interesting,
how about this black shadow box that reflects only sadness?
That's not all it can do. Here, let me see it.
Gathered today to say their final goodbyes to this fallen Louisville police officer, D.D. Mega-Doo-Doo.
I do think this offers more than just the weirdness perspective, even though she as well really wants to hammer the point home that she's
Not like you.
When Luz powers the TV and everyone is interested, it creates a bond between the two, albeit a surface level bond, which makes sense because now this witch lady, also known as Ida, also shares in Luz's nature to not conform and sees this human as a great way to sell things. So with a dozen or so people with money ready to buy the glowing box that emits sound, Ida makes a sale, and Luz partners with her to sell more items. I'm sorry, that's what happened if this was done logically.
Well, Luz, that was pretty clever. For a human.
That's kind of a weird thing for another human to say.
Oh, dear child. I'm not like you. I'm Ida, the Owl Lady.
Excuse me, what in the world are you doing? There's people around you that wish to purchase from you, and you're standing up explaining yourself to the one person who's not interested in buying anything. Was the exposition really necessary for this part? While explaining herself, she's busted. Nice pun I did there. This is actually one part of the show that I really did enjoy. Through the beginning here, we see Ida treating Luz in a mean way that implies that she thinks Luz can be dispensable. Combine the guard wanting her for misdemeanors, and Ida stealing things earlier in a very cliche owly way, she comes across as a villain from the outside looking in, which leads you to think that maybe the show has the main character tagging with an evil witch before it pulls the rug from underneath you. It was actually a great twist that pulls the mirror in front of morality and allows for you to comfortably shift your perspective of the main character, as yes, while she is a criminal, her crimes are not something that we could agree is morally wrong. There's actually quite a bit of times that I laughed during this episode.
You won't get away with this, Owl Lady! Yeah, alright, you did. You got away with it. Oh, boo-hoo!
It makes me wish that the episode would dive into topics that didn't essentially just revolve around being the same thing. Speaking of, this is Boiling Isles, a beautifully animated land that is composed of all types of supernatural beings, which to us humans are composed of fantastical things that we believe in. I think that's pretty interesting. Does that mean that we're going to get into interesting characters? What's the policy on being leaked out into the world? Why were giraffes too weird for this world? Too bad this episode doesn't go into that because we have to introduce another weird character, the most egregious one of them all. They're not egregious because of their character. I actually find that King is one of the better characters, but because of the story that is given to him. However, do we not see that this is just another character who is unaware of their own perspective to a comical degree sort of character that is in every single one of these shows?
Pop Pop said that you had to stay in the cart. You know you can't take me!
Yes, not the same character, but the same perspective and the same dynamic because these shows are becoming very formulaic and structured. It's a shame too because of how much I enjoyed the concept of Boiling Isles. I enjoyed this house, the Owl House. The music composition really gave it a nice shine to its neat color palette and detail. I particularly like how they subtly show the wanted poster on the wall, making it clear that Ida always has 3 stars in GTA, which allows the authorities to take lethal force. I also love the backstory here, in which Ida describes in detail that the king without his crown turned into this little guy, and without it, he has no power and needs it. Was he the true king of the land until the main antagonist Warden Raph overthrew him? Is that why Ida is constantly on the run? Too bad the episode doesn't want to dive into anything unique because it has to show you that being weird is okay.
Where are we going?
Somewhere super fun. The Conformatorium. A place for those considered unsuitable for society.
The Warden apparently has a jail, which makes sense oddly for this medieval land. I think it makes sense with the way that he's described to rule with an iron fist. The part that sticks out is that they specifically describe this place as a place where people who don't conform go. Now technically, while this is correct and doesn't lend itself to be only for people who Warden Raph thinks are too weird, because someone who commits arson or steals something is not conforming to the laws, I can't help but feel like this was a deliberate attempt to just be a jail for the weird, just because of the fact that the episode wants you to know that it's weird and weird is okay.
Hang on tight. Meet you guys at the top of the tower.
You know, if you were also going in the direction of the top of the tower, why didn't she just go with them rather than having this blatantly... what?
Haha, cats don't do that.
Oh, because you wanted to do a cat not landing on its feet joke. Priorities. I love this jail, very circular, and using this neat green and red ambience. I love the music that comes with it. It emits a very brooding and dark mood. I can't wait to see this guy. Hopefully he serves as an antagonist who wants to rule over the land for fame or fortune or legacy. Maybe he's a scarred victim who locks away the people who remind him of his past self, which is why he wears a mask, and makes the guards heavily covered as well.
I'm not a criminal.
Not yet, you're not.
Neither are we. The stupid warden likes to lock people up who don't fit in. Like, I write fanfics of food falling in love.
Or it's just the warden who locks up people for being weird. Alright. Alright. Tell me. Just get on your soapbox and tell me.
These aren't crimes. None of you actually did anything wrong. You're all just a bunch of weirdos.
This is when Warden Raft, the city overseer of the prison tower, finally makes his first proper appearance. He has arms that can morph into what he wants, a very cool mask, and a buff physique. He looks awesome. He stares directly into Luz and King's direction, never mind the fact that he just looked at the poster, the same poster that King is in, but let's not connect those dots. He hits the specific cell that has Luz in it. Remember that. He'd go after another branded weirdo and take them away, saying that, quote,
"There's no place in society for you if you can't fit in."
As Warden walks away, Luz opens the cell door, yes, the same cell door that was busted into, and then she can't open the next cell door. Forget the fact that this is inconsistent with which door the Warden power smash. If she's strong enough to open one cell door, you would think that she'd be strong enough to open another cell door, but you see, she can't, because the episode wants Luz to leave, but Luz is the main protagonist, and she can't do wrong, so she must come back and save them. She's sad because the weirdos are locked up, and they shouldn't be locked up for being weird. So remember that backstory Ida had about King being a powerful being that just required his crown? Well, that crown was a lie.
What a twist!
But it was Ida's way of making King happy in his own fantasy land. It's actually really endearing because it shows that Ida isn't self-centered and is a woman of her word, both to her friends and to strangers that can help her out. It actually brings the human parts of her witch character. You know, I can actually relate to this.
So if that dumb crown is important to him, it's important to me. Besides, us weirdos have to stick together, you know?
Okay. You want to talk about weird so much? Let's talk about weird. Dictionary.com states that weird means involving or suggesting the supernatural, unearthly, or uncanny. However, that's not accurate to what this show is talking about. The weird this show has been hammering home is people who have their own hobbies and interests that may not appeal to everyone. That doesn't make them weird, it makes them unique. This weirdness is to not appeal to the standard of something and deviate, creating an iteration, if you will. And this iteration can be uncomfortable for some people, creating outcasts who are viewed in a sometimes skewed way and pushed away from most of the society for not following the mainstream. The show wants to appeal to that weird. So when you watch this show and you relate to that weird, you find that the show is speaking to you because it gets you. The way that Gravity Falls got your interest, the way that Star Versus got your interest, the way that Amphibia got your interest, the way that Steven Universe got your interest, the way that OKKO got your interest, the way that Adventure Time got your interest, the way that Over the Garden Wall got your interest. And what's the opposite of weird? Normal. Normal, defined in dictionary.com, is conforming to the standard or the common type, something that the Owl House is doing and will continue to do. It will hammer a certain demographic with relatable traits, the way that other shows did, and have that same formulaic way that a character enters a fantastical world, and have the same character types, and sometimes even the same people working on it. And I need to call a spade a spade. This show is conforming to the standard or the common type. This show is serving to establish a standard. This show is normal. It's not weird. There are weird shows out there that are truly weird, sometimes uncomfortably weird, dabbling into the abstract, and guess what? Some people may look at those shows and call them weird and ostracize them. That leads me to the question of the day. When does weird become normal? Because if you want me to answer that question, it became normal when no one bats an eye at the fact that Disney put out essentially the same show structure 4 times. Literally, this episode could have been about Luz being too nerdy, and she's being sent to summer camp to make friends, and she gets whisked away to Nerdlandia where other nerds are locked away for being too nerdy. Or how she's a genius and she has no friends because they're bored about her being too smart, so she gets casted away to Smartlantis and the villain locks away people who are smarter than him. It's the same cartoon carbon copy of a story.
Don't ask questions, just consume product and then get excited for next product.
And I feel like a beheading is about to occur. holy crap. A beheading did occur, and it wasn't me. So the warden wants to go out with Ida because she's always escaping him. A sort of playing hard to get fantasy, I suppose. She declines and they escape his grasp. She frees the prisoners and we get into the big fight. I actually enjoy the fight that happens here mostly because this is when the show starts to become unique in its creativity. The way that the arms of Warden Wrath are animated just give me life. Plus, this counter Ida did with the fire was insane. Speaking of insane, the warden's face is nuts. Now that's scary. His mask served as a way to prolong his face, and that's oddly satisfying from a writing standpoint. Luz sees the prisoners she freed and mentions something about being unique, ironically, and weirdos are awesome too. You know, I kinda zoned out, you can't blame me. And they defeat the warden. I can't help but think that this could have been more epic if the prison break wasn't just 3 characters. It actually seems oddly empty. And it could have served as a grander symbol, especially for the first episode. I suppose the fireworks being a full circle from earlier makes sense with the flashback at the beginning of the episode, but considering that's not how building things up to repeat in a more significant manner works, I suppose it's supposed to be a symbolic thing? I don't know. Oh no, do I want to go back home? Home is where all the boring stuff is. And the people who oppress me are there. I want to be able to be weird in a place that accepts me. Yeah, it's episode 1, so she's staying here. But the crazy thing is, unlike Amphibia, the question here is pretty apparent. Wouldn't someone know that she's missing? Like the camp doesn't do roll call and had a bus coming towards her? I don't know, I guess we're not supposed to think about that because that's logical. Seriously, if someone comes up to me and tells me that this show is weird, I'm going to respectfully disagree with their opinion because having a full-blown argument with someone about their own interest in animation is kind of stupid because everyone should just watch what they want to watch. And I guess that's sort of the main thing I have here, just watch what you want to watch. I just find it annoying that this is the most blatant and egregious example of this show's formula. It's not unique, it comes across as more of what we had, and it seems like the norm to these shows. However, when the show keeps trying to tell me that it's weird and it's for the weirdos and being weird is okay, it's not any of those things. It doesn't stand for any of those things. So don't call the Owl House weird. It's part of the norm, and it seems that not many people have a problem with it. Thank you for watching. Take care. Alpha out.